My name is Conrad Francis, born in Sri Lanka and a two-time Olympian. And right now I'm in education as a performance coach in Seoul Foreign School. I started off in Sri Lanka swimming. That's where I began my initial sports. And I transitioned to Australia in 1995. I was on a university scholarship for high performance swimming. And I moved in 1995 to Melbourne to to qualify for the Sydney Olympics. And so that was a journey by itself. It was a new discovery, a new journey, new people, new culture. And most importantly, the training aspect was totally different, and I enjoyed it. And it was a challenge, and it came down to resilience. So yeah, that was my first Olympics was the Sydney 2000, and then moved on to another 4 years to represent Sri Lanka again in the 2004 Athens Olympics. And of course, along the line, swam at 3 Commonwealth Games, World Championships, World Cup, and then South Asian Games. And then finally, 2013, also I started, I thought to myself, it's time to retire and move on to the professional career in education and performance coaching. So in a nutshell, yeah. The highlight for me would be my first Olympics. Qualifying for the first Olympics, and that was my childhood dream. To have those 5 rings on my belt, and I think it was that 100 butterfly, that first event, that was the highlight. Standing behind that block, absorbing, tens and thousands of people, and my mom and dad for the first time watching me swim at a big stage. So that would be the highlight of my career. And one more, the next second one was in 2003 at the Asian Championships, when I won 2 golds, in the 50 and the 100 butterfly in Macau. And that was, the icing on the cake. And yeah, so those are the best 2 memories, and of course then the Athens 2004. I think it was just my maturity. While I was still being a professional athlete, I always wanted to have a dual career. It was not only about swimming, but I wanted to study at the same time, because I didn't want to get back. I didn't want to lose time, and I wanted to be the head of the game. So because through experience, I've seen many other athletes who have dedicated their life throughout their sports, and then when it comes to studies, it takes a lot of hard work to get back into studies. So I transitioned between studies and training at the same time. And so I did a dual career program, and it worked well for me. And I think that's the best option for any athlete, I would say, because it gives you a different perspective, of mindset, and it takes away the pressure from being an athlete all the time, into education. And I think it's important to have both running simultaneously. For me, I was preparing myself. It was not something that I just dropped a hat and said I'm done. I prepared myself. I groomed myself to be ready to face the world. And like as I said before, I started coaching while I was training high performance, and being in the education, it gave me that perspective of one step ahead. So the day that I hung my goggles, that was the day I said to myself, okay, it's time to face the real world, in the professional life. And for me, it was not a big change, because I've been doing that for the past 2 years in my swimming career, towards the latter part, and I've enjoyed it ever since. The challenges that I had was missing my friends, my training mates. We were one family, a tight unit in Melbourne, at my old club, and leaving them behind and facing the real world was different, because people didn't understand our mentality and how we think. And so that was one aspect. And I think the second aspect was, being an athlete, being so disciplined. When you join an organization, we looked for, I looked for, the structures, because we were so used to structures, working on time, time management. So I think that was one of my, challenges that I had to get used to working in education. And of course, I was working at the university as well. But then I think that helped me change a bit. It was not only about me, because as an athlete, it was always about me, being the best I can. But then working as a team, working as a team and learning to accept other ideas and and contributing. And I think that's where the challenges came across. But then again, I was quick to learn, and I believe it's always teamwork that moves forward, and and that's how you become a better person. I would say I missed it. I missed it a lot, but I still kept training. Not at that intensity. And till today, I still train. I still do my weights, but of course in a much more lighter way. And I still eat healthy. For me, it's trying to keep that body shape. I think it's important as being a role model to others and being a mentor. I think myself, I think I should set the example to others, and I've always kept that mentality the same way. And for me, it's always been the 3Ds, the dedication, determination, the discipline, and that was my three guiding pillars, and I think that's what's important. Actually, my coach, my head coach in Australia, Lee Nugent, and my parents, you know, they never pushed me to do things, but I think it was just me. I have this slogan, "Me against the world," um, and whatever I do, it was on me. And I used to do a lot of reading, what other athletes would do, and Michael Johnson was one of them that I used to follow, and I used to read a lot of his books and autobiographies. And my coach was mainly my father back home in Australia, and he said, end of the day, you've got to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. And those are the very words he pretty much told me, and that was it. And I did everything else, the research, the studies, and where I wanted to head. And my parents supported me all along. Right now, I work at Seoul Foreign School as the high performance coach, and I look after the entire club team. So we have 34 strong swimmers that represent Seoul Foreign School and on national teams. And I had two students, one in Hong Kong representing the Olympic team, Olympic trials, and another student athlete from Serbia, who went for Olympic trials. So yes, I'm very close to swimming. Swimming is my second heart, I would say, apart from my wife. But yeah, I enjoy swimming. I like swimming, and it's the science behind it, the biomechanics is what I thrive on, and what I try to give, what we do a lot of experimenting in training, and I think it's all about trial and error. So yeah, swimming. I would say swimming is always on the top of my list. I like kids. I enjoyed working with kids, and I think that's the foundation right there. The foundation is so important for the present generation, to become good ambassadors for the world. And I think where I enjoyed it was when I first started lecturing in my university as a third year student, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. And then when I started doing my first year of coaching, I was coaching at an international school in Melbourne, and that's when I started liking the education system, working with little kids, from elementary right up to high school. And that's when the turning point came into my life, that education was the path I wanted to take. And because I wanted to be in coaching, in the high performance coaching, there are avenues and there are institutions and schools that hold high performance training. And yeah, so that journey has been rewarding. And till today, I've been in education, and there is no turning back. And just watch them smile, the kids smile, sharing my story, my journey, and I think that's the positivity that I give back to the community. I used to play cricket, a lot of cricket, and I almost made the national team for Sri Lanka, so I had to choose either cricket or swimming. But I chose swimming because I wanted to build my own brand, and like I said, to be a role model to others. And I think that brand that I have chosen to be, for example, in Sri Lanka, if I go back to Sri Lanka, everybody wants to know what I do, what I did, what did I do to achieve what I have achieved. And it's a story of my own, that I try to create. And and the other aspect of it is I like reading autobiographies, And I think that's where you learn a lot from other athletes, and things that you can take out of it and put it into my life, into my toolbox. And I think that's something that you can't buy. It is something that you learn from knowledge and reading. And yeah, so that's one way of putting it. And you know anybody who there are many who come to me and say, what is it that you did different. I said, just you got to be different, because the moment you become different and when you start doing the right things, things fall into place. And to stand out, you've got to do things beyond what other people would do. I think meeting my wife, definitely. She, being an athlete, being an athlete, we had no friends. I had no friends, because my goal was making Olympic teams and representing the country. But yeah, meeting my wife, I think it changed me to take a step back, enjoy what life is all about, after retirement. But there are times, I'm still in my track, and then she reminds me, hey, listen, you're not that person anymore. But yeah, I would say meeting my wife. For me, success is all about watching my student athletes perform at their best and achieving their goals. Because one thing that I keep saying to my athletes, it's not about winning, it's not about losing. It's the journey that you come through that, and learning the elements of through that journey, and taking those life skills into their lives and using it, for the betterment, and supporting them, guiding them, and being a mentor to them. I think that's the most important part that I support my student athletes with. The key thing, I think, is stay true to yourself. You got to be true to yourself. Be humble. I think being humble is very important, because we get caught up in so much, in day-to-day affairs, but we forget where we come from. And that's one thing I've learned through my parents. The higher you go, the humble you should become. And I think that's something that I've always lived by. And like I said, work hard. You got to work hard, because the moment you start working hard, people recognize you. Do the right thing, and making sure that that I whatever I've done in my past 30 years, that there is growth. And to see my student athletes, or whoever who cross paths with me, to do better than me. And I think that's the best, the joyous moment that could give me. I think you need to be ready for retirement. A lot of the athletes that I see now, they sacrifice so much of their years. Whether you make it one Olympics, two Olympics, they forget the process of what's going to happen next. And I think education is very important. Prepare yourself to be ready for that transition. And I what I did was, in my last 2 years of my retirement, I started getting into the dual athlete career program. And I think that's important, finding your niche, finding your weaknesses, finding your position and what you're good at, and start sharpening those skills. And I think that's important. We were very old school. We did, between 50 to 70K a week. I'm a sprinter. I only swam the 50, 100, 200. But now training has revolutionized so much. Sprinting has revolutionized so much. Train much more smarter. Less meters, more recovery. Yeah, that's what I do, and that's what I'm doing right now with my athletes. I like visiting cafes, sipping coffees, and watching the world go by, which doesn't happen. But anyway, yeah, that's one of my hobbies. And anytime given, spending time with my wife, walking around, learning new things and traveling. Love traveling. Yeah, I would say Michael Johnson. I think he's one of the greatest athletes ever come across, and I think it's the struggle that he had, from how he started and where he's now. And I think it's a life lesson to learn from great athletes, like legends like that. And yeah, I would, any given Sunday, I would be with him to learn his lifestyle. I think my secret hidden talent, I think, would be, how to, it's more like how to race. it's a secret, like how my coach taught me. And there are certain elements that you need to do before you race, and standing behind the block, visualizing. And I think that's something important, and that's one of my greatest strengths that I had before I was racing.